Why should we listen to this pathetic junior member of the FTL community? The general from the Gree armies roared, as it rose from the nest bed that had accommodated the biped rhinoceros-like creature. They hold less than 15 systems, have no fleet worth noting, and can barely travel at 100 lumen. They still use kinetic weapons, the inbred runts. It finished, as it inflated the chin bags, a sign of male dominance. The rest of the Gree representatives sat around the table in silence, forced into submission by the large male's display. We do not need these humans to defend against the Clarkson invaders. We will persevere, the general argued against the deafening silence. The only creature at the table that wasn't Gree rose from its seat, straightened the recess of his uniform, and shot a very comforting, toothless smile at the large male. You're right, General, the human said. You don't need us or our lack of tech. She smiled in an effort to signal appeasement, as she looked around the faces at the table. Your armies use plasma weaponry, as does the Klaxon, am I correct? The smile persisted as the general nodded in reply. Plasma weapons are the pinnacle of infantry tech, it boomed. The human female nodded approvingly. Tell me, General, what part of the enemy are your soldiers trained to aim at? Center mass, the Gree answered confidently, with an 85% hit rate. I see. And what happens if they hit a limb, say, an arm or a leg? The smile persisted with its comforting aura. The limb is severed and the wound cauterizes instantly. I see. The human reached into a pocket in the uniform jacket and pulled out a small projectile. This is a 7.62mm high explosive armor-piercing projectile. It is the standard munition of our terribly low-tech marines. The projectile itself has a tempered steel casing, which allows it to penetrate anything short of vehicular armor. The inertia reduction causes the shell to collapse on itself, forcing the explosive charge at the back of the casing to collide with the detonator embedded in the front. She placed the tiny projectile on the table in front of her empty seat as she continued. Our marines are also trained to aim for center mass, where the explosion will cover the surrounding soldiers with the innards of the target. Should the projectile hit an arm, the hand at the end will be slapping across the helmet of the nearest ally, while the surrounding soldiers are covered in the blood spray. She sipped the glass of water with her eyes closed, as she recalled her first field kill. After that, the wounded target will be forced to the ground by a comrade, and the wound will be attended by the medic. One shot has taken 3 enemy combatants out of the immediate skirmish, and the rest will be mentally scarred for life as they are forced to relive their comrades' screams and flailing nightly in their minds. She put her glass back on the table with just enough force to cause the projectile to fall over on the surface. This resulted in every single one of the seated Gree to lean away from the table in their nests, with their eyes peeled on the projectile. Plasma lances are the preferred naval weaponry of the senior species in the FTL community, yes? She then asked rhetorically. The answer was scattered nods from random nests. You are so focused on stopping the front line of your enemies, on having a line to show your people and leaders so you can say, this is the front, this is as far as the enemy has pushed, this is the strength of our forces. The human sighed and shook her head a little. We have a saying, she said quietly after a pregnant pause. Amateurs worry about tactics. Veterans deal with logistics. We use thermonuclear warheads mounted on our underperforming FTL engines. It makes no difference how fast you can travel in space warfare, General. It matters how fast you can stop. Her smile widened to one that projected anything but comfort. We simply blow the first ship in the convoy to pieces, and the shrapnel deals with the following 5. FTL inertia is a bitch to defend against. The General deflated the chin sacks in shock. How do you think we've maintained our borders against our neighbours? Not by punching neat holes in big ships. No, we've seeded the borders with self-aiming FTL warheads, reducing any ship that doesn't use the allotted trade vectors to a metaphorical barbed-wired fence. And the trade vectors are heavily regulated with a mix of red tape, FTL warheads, and inspections. You don't need us to fend off the Klaxon, General. You don't need us to win, either. You need us for the one thing we do better than most other species. She gently seated herself on the table and dipped a finger in the glass of water, after which she gently rang it along the rim of the glass, producing a low-pitched tone that slowly rose and dropped in volume as she continued to speak. We don't deal in tactics or formations. We deal in logistics, optimizing ours and destroying the enemy's. We fought enough wars against ourselves to be able to come up with a solution to anything the galaxy can throw at us. And 3 weeks ago your people were attacked, not for resources or tactical positions, but because you just happened to adhere to a different code of conduct than the Klaxon. We don't like it when someone is forced to follow other people's rules. We've done that enough to know what it entails. You didn't ask us to come here, but here I am, offering our skills and knowledge in the protection of your people, General. The final word held an undertone seething with both a challenge, a threat, and a promise. She paused and the ringing stopped, rose from the table's surface and retook her seat in the chair. Then she picked up the bullet and clenched it in her fist. You treat this as a game, General, holding your tried and tested technical equilibrium as a forte. A game becomes a sport when you write down the rules, and we have rules, General. Rules that we must follow to keep ourselves in check, to maintain our sanity and what little dignity war can allow. She leaned back in the chair and held up the bullet. We're not looking for a target, General. We're looking for friends. She tossed the projectile in a lazy arc towards the giant Kree, who caught it with ease. The ball is in your court. Now choose your team.